You knew better than to come here.
Please, Mom, let me explain.
I don't want to hear it. Get out!
My mother-in-law slapped me on Christmas morning because she believed I had stolen her late mother's sapphire ring. She did it in front of everyone without giving me a chance to explain myself. What she didn't know was that within 2 hours, the truth would come out, and the same woman who had accused me of being a thief would be standing there speechless. My name is Melissa Turner, and I was 28 years old. I had been married to Ryan Whitfield for 6 years, and during those 6 years, I had spent countless holidays trying to become part of his family. I brought food, helped prepare dinner, washed dishes, remembered everyone's birthdays, and always made the 2-hour drive from Columbus to Dayton without complaining. But Diane Whitfield, Ryan's mother, never really accepted me. She rarely called me Melissa. Most of the time, I was simply Ryan's wife. I had learned not to expect affection from her. Still, every Christmas I convinced myself that maybe this year would be different. That morning I arrived carrying a homemade apple pie, while snow covered the driveway outside. The house was already filled with relatives, laughter, Christmas music, and the smell of cinnamon rolls. For a few minutes, everything felt normal. Then Diane suddenly disappeared upstairs. When she returned, her face had changed completely. Her mother's sapphire ring, a piece of jewelry she had treasured for years, was missing from her bedroom. Diane looked around the crowded living room before her eyes stopped on me. "You were alone in this house this morning," she said. I immediately knew something terrible was about to happen. I told her I had never touched the ring. She didn't believe me, and before I could say another word, Diane accused me of stealing it in front of everyone. Within minutes, my purse was being searched, my character was being questioned, and the woman I had spent 6 years trying to impress raised her hand against me. I had no idea that her accusation would soon destroy the reputation of someone she had always protected. Diane had always treated her 2 children differently. Ryan was her responsible son, but Courtney, his younger sister, was the one she constantly protected. No matter how many mistakes Courtney made, Diane always found a reason to excuse them. Courtney was 31 and had already gone through 2 divorces. She often complained about money, arrived at family gatherings without bringing anything, and somehow always left with whatever she needed. Diane never questioned her behavior. Instead, she worried about whether Courtney had enough. I had noticed the difference for years. Whenever I helped Diane prepare a holiday meal, she thanked me with a quick nod. When Courtney walked through the door, Diane hugged her like she hadn't seen her in months. I stopped expecting fairness a long time ago. That Christmas Eve, Diane mentioned the sapphire ring belonging to her late mother. She had kept it hidden for years and had repeatedly joked that one day it would belong to the daughter-in-law who proved herself worthy. I never wanted it. What I wanted was something much simpler. To feel like Ryan's wife was also part of the family. Courtney, however, seemed interested whenever Diane mentioned the jewelry. What nobody knew was that Courtney was facing serious financial trouble. Her credit cards were nearly maxed out, bills were piling up, and she was desperate to find money before the new year. That evening, while everyone focused on presents and dinner preparations, Courtney watched Diane carefully. I didn't notice anything unusual. I had no reason to suspect that someone in that house was already thinking about the sapphire ring. By Christmas morning, the family would discover that the treasured jewelry was missing, and Diane's first suspicion would fall on the one person she had never truly trusted, me. Christmas morning began peacefully. Snow covered the streets outside Diane's house, while relatives gathered around the decorated tree, and children opened presents near the fireplace. I arrived early because I was used to helping with everything before the family celebration became busy. Around 10 o'clock, Diane suddenly went upstairs to retrieve her mother's sapphire ring. She had planned to place it beneath the Christmas tree before announcing who would receive it. A few minutes later, I heard hurried footsteps coming down the stairs. Diane appeared shaken. She returned to her bedroom and searched again, opening drawers, checking jewelry boxes, and looking beneath clothing. The ring was nowhere. What made the situation worse was that nothing else had disappeared. Her cash remained untouched. Her expensive necklaces were still inside the dresser. Only the sapphire ring was missing. Diane came downstairs and asked everyone if they had gone upstairs that morning. I told her I had stayed downstairs except for helping carry some decorations earlier. Then she remembered that I had been alone inside the house for about 20 minutes while she drove to the store to buy cream. Her expression immediately hardened. She looked directly at me as if she had already reached a conclusion. "Where is my mother's ring?" she demanded. I stared at her, confused by the question. "I don't have it." Instead of searching more carefully or asking anyone else, Diane announced that someone had stolen it. The room became uncomfortable. Conversations stopped, and every pair of eyes turned toward me. I could feel suspicion spreading before I had even been given a chance to defend myself. Diane took one step closer. "I know exactly who did it." My heart sank when she pointed at me. Diane's finger remained pointed at me while everyone in the living room watched. "You've always wanted something that wasn't yours," she said. "Give me back my mother's ring." I could barely process what I was hearing. "Diane, I didn't take anything. I haven't even been upstairs." She shook her head and accused me of lying. Ryan finally stepped forward, but instead of defending me, he looked confused and kept asking everyone to calm down. Diane wasn't interested in calming down. She grabbed my purse from the couch and emptied everything onto the coffee table. My wallet, keys, lipstick, tissues, and gum scattered across the surface. There was no ring. For one brief moment, I thought that would be enough to prove my innocence. It wasn't. Diane stared at the empty purse and then looked back at me with the same anger. "You've been waiting 6 years to take something from this family." The words hurt more than I expected. I had spent years showing up for birthdays, holidays, dinners, and family emergencies. I had never asked Diane for anything except basic respect. Then she stepped closer. I told her again that I hadn't touched the jewelry. Her expression suddenly hardened. Before I understood what she was about to do, her hand struck my cheek. The sound seemed louder than the Christmas music playing in the background. Everyone froze. My face burned as I stood there, completely stunned. Someone gasped. A child began crying. Ryan looked at me, but for several seconds he said nothing. I slowly raised my hand to my cheek. Diane had accused me of stealing, searched through my belongings, and humiliated me in front of the entire family. Now she had crossed a line that could never be erased. For several seconds nobody moved. The Christmas decorations continued glowing around us, completely out of place after what had just happened. I could hear someone quietly comforting the crying child, while everyone else stared at Diane. Gerald, Ryan's father, was the first person to break the silence. "Diane, that's enough." His voice was calm, but there was anger underneath it. I looked at Ryan, hoping he would finally say something. He had watched his mother accuse me, search my belongings, and hit me. Yet he stood there frozen, unable to choose between protecting his wife and confronting the woman who had raised him. Something inside me changed. I bent down, picked up my purse, and put everything back inside. My hands were shaking so badly that I dropped my keys twice. Nobody stopped me when I walked toward the door. Outside, the cold air hit my face. I had left my coat inside, but I didn't care. I reached my car, climbed into the driver's seat, and closed the door. For 11 minutes I simply sat there. I couldn't start the engine. My hands were trembling and my cheeks still burned. I thought about every Christmas I had spent trying to make Diane happy, every meal I had prepared, every favor I had done, every insult I had swallowed because I wanted peace. Then I remembered Courtney. She had been strangely quiet all morning. I took out my phone and called Marcus Banks, Courtney's ex-husband. He still spent time with their children and knew things about Courtney that the rest of the family didn't. When he answered, I asked him one question. "Has Courtney told you anything about needing money before New Year's?" There was a long silence. Then Marcus said, "Why are you asking?" His voice told me I had just found the first crack in the story. Marcus answered my question with another question, and that immediately made me more alert. I told him about the missing sapphire ring without explaining every detail. I didn't want gossip. I wanted facts. After a few seconds, he finally admitted that Courtney had been struggling financially. 2 days earlier, she had called him asking for help with a serious car payment problem. She needed money quickly because she had received a repossession notice and was terrified of losing her vehicle. Marcus said he refused to lend her anything because he was already dealing with his own responsibilities. Then Courtney had said something strange. She told him not to worry because she had a plan and wouldn't need his help after Christmas. I sat silently inside my car as those words sank in. A plan. I suddenly remembered Courtney standing near Diane's bedroom hallway the previous evening. At the time I hadn't thought anything of it. Now the memory felt different. I thanked Marcus and ended the call. For a few minutes I considered driving straight home. I had every reason to leave that family behind and never return. But I couldn't. Diane had humiliated me because she believed I was guilty. If I left without finding the truth, everyone might continue believing her accusation. I grabbed my coat from the back seat and walked toward the house. When I entered the living room again, conversations stopped. Diane looked surprised to see me. I didn't argue with her. I simply looked around at everyone and asked, "Has anyone checked Courtney's car?" Diane immediately became defensive. "Don't you dare accuse my daughter." I remained calm. "I'm not accusing anyone. I'm asking a question." Gerald looked at Diane, then at Courtney. For the first time that morning, Courtney couldn't meet my eyes. Gerald was already tired of watching the family argue, so when I mentioned Courtney's car, he immediately agreed that someone should check it. Courtney reacted differently. Her face lost its color, and she began explaining why nobody needed to search her vehicle. She said it was freezing outside and insisted that she had locked everything inside. The more she talked, the more nervous she sounded. Gerald noticed it too. "Courtney, open the car," he said. She shook her head. "I don't understand why everyone is suddenly treating me like a criminal." I looked at her quietly. Nobody had called her a criminal. We were simply looking for a ring that had disappeared from the house. Gerald walked toward the front door. Courtney followed reluctantly, while Diane stayed behind for a moment, still refusing to believe her daughter could have anything to do with the situation. Outside, snow covered the driveway. Gerald unlocked Courtney's car and opened the passenger door. Courtney stood beside him, breathing quickly. He checked the seats, the floor, and the center console. Then he opened the glove compartment. Courtney suddenly whispered, "Dad, wait." Gerald stopped. Her shoulders dropped as if she had finally run out of excuses. She reached inside and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Nobody spoke. She slowly handed it to her father. Gerald opened it. The sapphire ring was inside. Diane stepped forward, staring at the jewelry in disbelief. Courtney began crying. Alongside the ring was a pawnshop appraisal slip dated for later that week. The room seemed to disappear around me. Diane looked at Courtney, then at me. For the first time since the accusation began, she understood exactly what she had done. She had believed her daughter-in-law was a thief without evidence, and the person she trusted most had been hiding the truth in her own car. Diane stood beside Courtney's car, holding the velvet pouch as though she could barely believe what was inside. Her eyes moved from the sapphire ring to Courtney's tearful face. Then she looked toward me. For several seconds she said nothing. The same woman who had shouted at me that morning now seemed completely different. Her anger was gone, replaced by embarrassment and regret. "Melissa," she finally whispered. "I'm sorry." I didn't answer immediately. Diane stepped closer and tried to explain herself. She said she had been frightened when she realized the ring was missing. She admitted that she had convinced herself I was responsible before she had even considered another possibility. But none of those explanations changed what had happened. "You didn't ask me a single question before you hit me," I said quietly. Diane lowered her eyes. "I know. You searched my purse in front of everyone. You called me a thief. Then you slapped me because you believed your assumption mattered more than my word." Tears filled her eyes. I was wrong. I looked at Courtney, who was still crying beside the car. She finally admitted that she had taken the ring because she was desperate for money. She had planned to pawn it after Christmas and somehow replace it before Diane discovered what happened. I didn't feel satisfaction watching her confess. I felt tired. Diane reached toward my arm. I stepped backward. She stopped immediately. "I need you to understand something," I told her. "This stopped being about the ring the moment your hand touched my face." The driveway became silent again. I had forgiven enough insults over the years to keep everyone comfortable, but I wasn't going to forgive myself for accepting disrespect anymore. Diane nodded slowly. For the first time, she seemed to understand that an apology could not undo everything, could only begin the work. I didn't want revenge. I wanted everyone to understand that what happened to me wasn't something they could simply erase with a few tears and an apology. Diane stood quietly near the doorway while the family gathered around her. Courtney had admitted what she had done, and the truth was finally impossible to deny. I looked at Ryan. For most of our marriage, he had avoided disagreements with his mother. Whenever Diane criticized me, he stayed quiet because he believed silence would keep everyone peaceful. That day, I needed him to understand that silence had a cost. I won't attend another Whitfield family holiday unless you are willing to stand beside me when it matters, I told him. Ryan looked ashamed. I should have defended you. Yes, I replied. You should have. Then I turned toward Diane. I wasn't going to demand that she punish Courtney. That was her responsibility as a mother. Instead, I asked Diane for one thing. If you want me to believe your apology, tell everyone why you accused me. She looked uncomfortable. The relatives remained silent. Finally, Diane took a breath. I assumed it was Melissa because I never allowed myself to know her, she admitted. I judged her for years, and when something disappeared, she was the easiest person for me to blame. Her voice became weaker. I was wrong. I embarrassed her, accused her, and hurt her because of my own prejudice. Nobody interrupted. I didn't feel victorious. I felt relieved. For 6 years I had tried to earn a place in that family. Now I realized I didn't need to earn basic respect. I could simply require it. I told Diane I wouldn't press charges against Courtney because I wasn't interested in destroying her life. But Courtney would have to face the consequences of her decision. Then I walked inside, collected my coat, and prepared to leave. I drove home that evening with the heater running and the Christmas lights of passing houses disappearing behind me. Ryan stayed at his parents' home to deal with everything that had happened, and for once I didn't feel responsible for fixing the situation. The next few weeks were uncomfortable for everyone. Courtney had to face the consequences of taking the ring. She returned it, admitted what she had done, and agreed to work with her parents on a repayment plan for her debts. She also began meeting with a financial counselor, so she could stop depending on desperate decisions whenever money became tight. Diane changed slowly. At first, her calls were awkward. She would apologize, then fall silent because she didn't know what else to say. Eventually, she started calling without asking me for favors or expecting me to organize family events. Sometimes she simply wanted to talk. That meant more to me than I expected. Still, I never forgot the slap. Forgiving someone didn't mean pretending nothing happened. I could accept Diane's effort while keeping boundaries that protected me. Ryan changed too. Watching me stand alone after his mother attacked me forced him to recognize how often he had chosen silence over defending his wife. He began speaking up when Diane criticized me and stopped expecting me to tolerate uncomfortable situations just to keep family peace. Months later, I still remembered that Christmas whenever someone asked about family traditions. I kept one photograph from that day. It wasn't a picture of the confrontation. It showed Gerald and me standing near the doorway after everything had been revealed. Gerald had believed me before anyone else had proof. That photograph reminded me of something I had forgotten. Being respected shouldn't require proving my innocence first. Sometimes the strongest response isn't revenge. Sometimes it's drawing a boundary, walking away from disrespect, and refusing to become invisible again. That Christmas didn't destroy my place in the family. It finally showed me where I stood.